Syria's leader has moved Turkey into second place and flew to Saudi Arabia. What is Erdogan doing? Why is it so important for Turkey to influence Syria? How are the US and Iran pressuring the situation? And what does Israel have to do with it? This is Ilya Brizak. Let's discuss it. On February 2nd, Syrian rebel leader and Syria's new self-appointed president, Mohammed al-Julani, made his first international visit. At the invitation of Prince Ibn Salman, he officially flew to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where after landing he gave a speech on the situation between Syria and Israel. Not to Turkey, as it was planned by all Turkish channels, but to the main Sunni Arab country, which is a very important sign in the Middle East. Subscribe to my channel right now. I tell you about the latest news from around the world. Given that all information flows literally from the first days of the overthrow of the Assad regime, linked the appearance of al-Julani with Turkey, then why did Julani make his first visit exactly to Saudi Arabia and not to Erdogan? And why was it so important? First, such an infopod was important for Turkey itself, both on the world stage and for domestic politics. Especially for domestic, since Erdogan suffered a crushing defeat in Syria in 2016 against a coalition of Russia and Iran, and the recent change of the Assad regime simply could not take place without Turkey's involvement, so that Erdogan could rehabilitate the name of the incumbent Turkish party in the eyes of his country. On the world stage, however, Turkey has tried in every possible way to show that it was the main behind-the-scenes actor in the collapse of the Assad regime. Or rather, it did not prevent dozens of sources from doing so. The Turkish Foreign Ministry was one of the first to fly to Damascus, and Julani was even invited to Ankara for an audience with the Turkish president himself, even though it was not in his rank, because Julani was not yet legally president. The true beneficiaries of the regime change in Syria are several, the main of which is now definitely Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, has also been the United States' best friend for decades. Experts initially emphasized that Syria has two paths. The first is to go with the moderate Sunni axis of Saudi Arabia in the UAE, and the second is to go with the Muslim Brotherhood axis of Qatar and Turkey. And crucial will be Julani's first international visit. Where he flies first will command the parade. Plus, al-Julani's roots play an important role here. He was born in Saudi Arabia in Riyadh, so he doesn't have a lot of allies to choose from. And what has happened is a major game changer for the entire region. Just a year ago, Saudi Arabia was solemnly reconciling with Bashar al-Assad, having lost hope of regime change. Now, the main role in building Syria's future will be played by Riyadh. It is not Erdogan, but the Saudis who will set the tone for change. As for Tehran's hopes of any chance, Julani's trip to Riyadh broadly indicated the new Syrian government's interest in joining the Persian Gulf more closely away from Iran. Nevertheless, Turkey holds very strong cards in this game. That Turkey was initially involved in the overthrow of the Assad regime and claimed a stake and influence is a fact. The sore point for Turkey is the Kurds. According to Reuters, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said that the Turkish government hopes the U.S. will stop cooperating with the Syrian Kurds and that the U.S. decision to support the Syrian Kurds was wrong and it is time to correct it. And it is likely that the U.S., in bidding for its sphere of influence, has conceded to Turkey, because the U.S. president's recent executive order suspending foreign aid speaks directly to that. Trump's executive order led to a halt in funding for Syrian Kurdish militias, including the PKK. According to the Turkey newspaper, the restrictions have affected absolutely everything, down to the costs of transportation, food, and pay for militants. It is claimed that the payments in February could be the last. But on the withdrawal of the U.S. Army from Syria, Trump has another condition for Erdogan. If the Israeli portal Mariv is to be believed, citing its sources, Donald Trump told Turkish President Erdogan that the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria is only possible if Turkey's relations with Israel are restored. You can't say this is unexpected, as such bargaining is exactly Trump's style. But it will be interesting to watch the further development of events, given the complexity of the situation. The Syrian Kurds, for their part, have been complaining about Turkey's increasing presence in Syria, including an offensive on new zones in the north of the country. But alas, it is likely that the issue with the Kurds has already been resolved and no one will hear them. Neither in the United States nor in Brussels, Trump is likely to withdraw the U.S. military from Syria, and Europe is primarily concerned not with the Kurds, but with the flow of migrants through Turkey. And the EU will not risk aggravating relations with Ankara. Besides, the other day, Julani said that he would not tolerate any armed formations on the territory of Syria, referring precisely to the Kurds. And the next visit of the self-proclaimed Syrian president should take place today in Ankara, right after his visit to Riyadh. And Turkey says it will sign a strategic military agreement with Syria. As part of the agreement, Turkey pledges to intervene in the event of any threat against Syria until the new authorities establish their own air force, Turkey reports. Turkey will sell drones and other weapon systems to Syria in order to form a capable Syrian army. But most importantly, Turkey plans to deploy 2 air bases in Syria, where it will maintain 50 F-16 airplanes, and at the same bases to train and educate Syrian military pilots. As many experts say, instead of Russian bases. And the EU has even promised to lift sanctions against Syria if this happens. EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, said that one of the main conditions for starting a dialogue on lifting sanctions should be the withdrawal of Russian troops from Syria. Then a Russian delegation consisting of the Deputy Foreign Minister and the Russian President's Special Envoy for Syria arrived in Damascus. After that, Russia began to withdraw its military equipment from Syria, which is confirmed by satellite images from January 18th and 27th. It turns out that the Kremlin's hopes for the possibility of leaving at least 2 Syrian bases in Tartus and Khmeimim failed. The Russians are moving all their equipment to bases under construction in Libya. In this way, Turkey will satisfy its long-standing failure, will put its bases and army in Syria. It'll be involved in the developments, perhaps even mend relations with Israel, but the ball will always be in the Saudis' court, which means they're allies, and the key decisions will be made in Riyadh and Washington. So Israel is getting closer and closer to solving its big problem with Iran. A senior Fox News correspondent reported that Trump has said in private conversations that America has big things ahead of it, one of which is opening a U.S. embassy in Iran. That is, Trump is either playing a tricky game, or he has decided to make a diplomatic move, or he knows something about Iran that the rest of us don't know yet. Meanwhile, in an interview with Al Jazeera, Iranian Foreign Minister Iraqi confirmed that Iran has the technical capabilities to produce nuclear weapons, but the country has no such will and intention. He also noted that Iran-U.S. relations remain difficult, as U.S. policy has been hostile for decades, and he emphasized that Tehran is closely following the course of the new U.S. administration and will make decisions based on its actions. The Paris-based National Council of Resistance of Iran published a report claiming that a secret agency under Iran's defense ministry, which is in charge of space development, has stepped up work on nuclear warheads at the Sharud and Semnan sites. Specifically, the report said that the Qum-100 launch vehicle, pictured, which the Iranians used to launch the Shamran-1 research satellite on September 14, 2024, is capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. Officially, Tehran said at the time that the launch of the 60-kilogram satellite was experimental, and Iranian authorities repeatedly claimed that nuclear and space development for military purposes is not carried out in the Islamic Republic. To which the EU added that it should do everything possible to prevent the growth of Iranian influence in the region. In turn, Senator Lindsey Graham calls on Netanyahu and Israel to eliminate the Iranian nuclear program, saying that if we don't do it now, we will regret it later. Thus, it turns out that Iran is left virtually alone in the Middle East. It has lost Syria, it is cut off from Lebanon, and perhaps in the near future, there will be a historic series of renewed relations between a number of Middle Eastern countries and Israel. Stay tuned. Write in the comments what you think about this. Boosty and Patreon for those who want to support the channel. See you.